and Russia are imperialists, so are the powers that dominate NATO. And the government is silent on that. Afghanistan, the NATO war in Afghanistan. Tens of thousands of people slaughtered. People blown up with drone missiles at weddings, in buses, and so on by the NATO forces. The US-UK-led war in Iraq directly killed 500,000 people, as Gino Kenny just said. Indirectly, it resulted in the deaths of over 1 million people and completely destroyed the infrastructure of Iraq and completely destabilised the entire Middle East. In fact, the disaster that we've seen in Syria would not have happened were it not for the US-UK-led war in Iraq. Recently, Amnesty International and UN Human Rights Watch confirms something the Palestinians have been saying for decades, that we have said to the government and European Union for years, that Israel was an apartheid state involved in ethnic cleansing and committing war crimes against humanity. Any sanctions imposed by the European Union or NATO against them? No. Quite the contrary. The powers that dominate NATO arm Israel to the teeth, even though they are guilty of committing war crimes on an ongoing basis for 70 years against the Palestinian people. Utter hypocrisy. The war in Yemen, conducted by Saudi Arabia, that Leo Varadkar, and every year the Ireland sends people over to develop trade relations with the most despotic dictatorship in the world in Saudi Arabia, that has been conducting a war for 7 years in Yemen, that has killed 377,000 people, 10,000 children, and has brought 14 million people to the brink of starvation, according to the UN. Who are they armed by? The US, the UK and France. Directly involved in that war. Any sanctions against them? None. Why? Because it's in the US interest to support the Saudi dictatorship as part of their project of controlling and dominating that area for the purposes of oil. And you could go on through the list, and you're silent on those things. You see, that's what neutrality means. It means not being silent. So it's not about being indifferent, it means being consistent in opposing oppression, opposing imperialism, opposing warmongering, and not being selective, the way the government is, of some wars we're against, other wars we're for, if our allies are involved in them, if they're arming people.